The theme of the show is sustainable finance for all it's worth, as I mentioned earlier. But what exactly does that mean? With us today, we have experts that will talk about this. We have with us Daniel Barr. Daniel Barr is the General Secretary of the Swedish Pensions Funds. Here we go. Hello, Daniel. Glad to have you with us. We also have Joachim Jansson from Klimatbytet that was just previously showing his campaign. Hello, Joachim. You're here somewhere. And we also have Maria Mähl. She's partner and head of Nordics at Arabesque. Hello, Maria. She'll be with us here any second, I hope. Tanya Swidler, I see you already. Tanya Swidler is Director of ESG Solutions of Morningstar. Hello, Tanya. And there's Maria too from Arabesque. And Peter Jansen, who will be co-hosting this show. Peter is with us from Alicante, Spain. And Peter is Forbes Leadership Coach. And he will, as I said, co-host the end of this panel discussion. Daniel Barr, you are, of course, familiar with Klimatbytet. And in this campaign, Joachim has sort of, in a way, helped you launch the transition of funds that you have made possible at the Swedish Pensions Authority. So what do you have to say in response to his campaign?
Well, we run the largest fund platform here in Sweden. It's a part of the Pillar 1 pension system here. And we invest about 1,300 billion krona in funds. So we are by large the largest fund platform in the country. We had an assignment from the government to promote ESG investment, and we launched a functionality that people can log into our website and pick funds that do not invest in certain areas or have a low carbon footprint or a high ESG value. And we have had a quite massive response to that, a positive response. We launched that a couple of months ago, and several other fund platforms in Sweden, private platforms, is going in the same direction, inspired by what we've done. And Joachim's initiative is, of course, welcome for us. It's always good to have positive feedback from our customers, and I think it's one of several feedbacks that we had from our customers. We look very positive in his initiative.
Thank you very much. Joachim Jansson, why did you launch Klimatbytet, and how do you react to what Daniel Barr is saying here?
Yeah, the background is that I've been thinking about what could I do as a person, as an individual. And I've been, of course, change my life as a private person, but I start figuring out what could I do like that could scale, what could I do that actually could have a larger impact. And I've been trying to follow the thesis for the money and see what could I do, what could I impact out there so we could impact the money. Because if you could impact the money and get the money to flow in a more climate conscious way, I believe that the rest will follow. Then we will have trickle-down effects and we will have the whole system starting to change. And what happened was that a few weeks ago, I think it was April 4th, Daniel, when you launched this new service, I saw a tweet and I went into pensionsmyndigheten.se, Pensions Agent's site, and it just took me 10 minutes to switch. First, I was really upset, to be honest, because I didn't have any clue that I was investing in fossil fuels. I didn't have any clue that I was also investing in a lot of other things like weapons and porn and stuff like that, which I had no clue about. So I just started to read a bit about it. I tried then to switch over to other funds, and that was really easy, which I was happy about. And then I woke up next morning, and I had like 150 pulse, and I woke up, went down in the basement, the same basement where I am right now. And I was trying this idea out in a Facebook group and told them, let's try to divest and start investing in more climate conscious funds instead. And it just took a few hours, and then like 2, 3, 4 million Swedish crowns is already switched and transferred into better funds. And that's where I kind of figured out that this idea could scale. So if I have a platform, a site, and a lot of people pushing it, that could be the beginning of a movement and a change and transformation movement. And it is.
Yes. Thank you. Daniel, are you planning on launching this transition even more? Because it's been sort of low key so far from your side.
We're not planning to have any large marketing campaign, but we certainly will have press activities and market it on our website in our ordinary work. We probably also will collect some data how frequent this is used and how it's used, and publish different kinds of analysis around this to inform.
So why are you not making a bigger fuss, a bigger sort of launch about this? Because this is pretty remarkable.
I think it's pretty remarkable. I think it's not often that the government is in the forefront in this type of area, but this is the case here. Well, we are a public authority, and we work for our customers. We don't have a commercial interest in this. We like to enable our customers to make informed choices, also in the ESG dimension. That's why we're doing it. And I don't think we can defend actually to spend a lot of marketing money on this.
Well, I think this, thanks to Joachim's campaign, the word is spreading even faster. And Joachim, you've stated that if a modest of 1% of all Swedes put 10 minutes into changing their pension funds, an amount of 18 billion US dollars could be added to more climate-friendly, climate-active savings, smart retirement savings. That's a lot of money. So 10 minutes of 1% of Swedes would generate this much money. Well, thank you. I'd like to move on to Maria Mel from Arabesque. Maria, you have in Arabesque created the first analytics search engine that enables us to see how companies are working with the UN sustainability goals. And why do you do this work? And what effects have you seen from it so far?
Thank you. Yes, so we're an asset manager, but we're also a sustainability data analytics company. And for us, it's very important to help mainstream sustainability and sustainable investment, that everyone can have the ability to see what these companies, how they work and how they're affecting the world, both positively, but also with a negative impact. And looking at individual companies, we all know that we also can have an effect in helping them to change and help them on a positive trajectory. So what we've seen, similar to what we actually heard here earlier, is that a lot of people, companies and institutions that own, for instance, mutual funds or stocks, might not necessarily know what their companies are involved in or how their revenues are generated, or what activities they're involved in. So this creates a transparency that is very important when it comes to financial services. But if we want to use sustainable finance as a tool to help companies become more sustainable, we need to work on initiatives such as our S-ray, that we call it. It's a play on sustainability and X-ray because it's shining a light under the hood of the companies. And the previous one that we heard from Sweden. And these initiatives are very important to really show the positive and the negative impact of companies.
So how can companies and even regular people use your search engine and leverage their investments? Is it easy to access?
Well, traditionally, this was very hard to do. You had to have a set of analysts that would call the company, go and visit them and read up on reports. But we wanted to make this a little easier. So with the help of machine learning and big data, we collect data about the company similar to what you would do with regular analysts, but then we also add on top of that news that are out there, some social media sentiment. And we then built an online tool that everyone can use on our website, which is arabesque.com.
So it's open source, it's free to use.
Exactly. And that's very important because we have to remember that sustainable finance for a very long time were only for a part of society, for the ones who had a lot of money and could choose to invest in products that were given just as good returns as traditional ones. And we know today that sustainable financial products can generate as much, if not more, risk-adjusted return
Absolutely.
for traditional ones. So this is our attribution to giving everyone a tool. No matter how much money you have to invest, you should be able to find out how sustainable the companies that you want to invest in.
And Maria, do you have a company that you would like to give climate love to on the platform?
I do, and it's a former oil company. And remember what I said in the beginning, it's important to show and demonstrate and help nudge companies in the way to become more sustainable. And this is a Neste oil company who now started out as a traditional oil company and are now really made some big stride towards becoming more sustainable.
Thank you very, very much, Maria Mel from Arabesque. Tanya Swidler, Director of ESG Solutions for Morningstar. I'd like to address another question to you. You've analyzed the sustainability of investment funds. How do you see investors accepting these metrics? And how have they been used? Is there an impact?
Of course. Hello, everyone. So for us at Morningstar, our very mission is to deliver the best outcomes for the end investor. And several years ago, we realized that investors were missing metrics related to sustainability. And we wanted to provide more transparency around how different funds select companies. And we wanted to make sure that investors are able to understand how effectively are companies mitigating their material ESG risks. So since then, we've seen a tremendous amount of positive impact that those metrics have been providing. The ratings we've created are intentionally quite simple. They're 1 to 5 globes. And because of that simplicity, it actually helps to eliminate some of those complexities that Maria just spoke about. Since sustainable investment is a very complex space and it does encompass many different topics. So creating this baseline really helps to provide more transparency to investors. And as a result, they're actually able to start embedding sustainability into their investment decisions. So we have started seeing that investors are increasingly looking out for funds that have very strong ESG metrics and start moving away the capital from funds that hold companies that only invest into poor ESG performers.
Well, thank you. And last year, Tanya, you added a climate risk analysis. How has that been received? Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Of course. So climate change is really the leading factor in sustainable investing. And because clients are increasingly looking for ways to mitigate climate risk, we have launched a set of metrics that helps clients understand how much climate risk companies carry in their products, services, and operations, help understand how much exposure those companies have to fossil fuels, and also help understand how exposed are those companies to renewable energy solutions. And we, alongside those climate-related metrics, we've provided a low-carbon designation, which helps investors easily identify funds that are best prepared to a transition to low-carbon economy. So those funds tend to have lower level of carbon risk, as well as lower level of fossil fuel involvement. And the Swedish Pension Agency actually started providing low-carbon as a way for investors to easily identify those funds on the platform, thereby directing capital towards better climate-related investments, which is, of course, a very fantastic development.
Wonderful. So there's some collaboration here between the panelists. That's excellent. So I'm now handing over to Peter Jansen, Forbes coach. The floor is yours now, Peter. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And it's wonderful to be here with all of you. I believe that everything rises and falls on the shoulders of leadership. And leadership is all about seeing more and seeing more before the rest. We call this a vision. So this is what I'd like to be focusing on today. So my first question is for you, Joachim. Considering your background is in digital transformation rather than climate, I'm very interested in how your vision came to you and where you're seeing it. Where do you want it to go in the future? And I want you to think big here because, you've got a big audience.
Yeah, always think big and start small and act now, right? No, but where did it come from? I mean, it ticks in so many boxes for me, this klimatbyte, the climate transfer. It's about digitalization, it's about transparency, it's about data, it's about sustainability, it's about change, it's about transformation, all of these things that I'm interested in on a personal level. And as a professional, I work with large-scale change, transformation. And for me, this is all about large-scale change. And I think what I could maybe add some skills and expertise into is how to drive this change, how to get people aboard, how to get people to really start thinking as boring as your pension, for instance. So, and from that, I have then derived the idea, tested this as I talked about before, and it took us 5 days, and now we're up to 100 million Swedish crowns directed into more climate conscious funds. So that's actually where it all comes from.
I'm really hoping to see this coming from grassroots, develop into a global movement, Joachim. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Now, my next question is for you, Daniel. Taking policy aside, and of course, the fact that you are in a governmental institution, I'd like to think global with you today. Where do you see your vision and your work rolling out into the rest of the world? How do you see that happening? And what sort of leadership do you see emerging from this?
Well, being a Swedish government organization, knowing that ESG investment is quite fragmented business, Sweden different from other countries, even in the Scandinavian region. I think what will happen in the near future, hopefully, is that our initiative will spread to other private institutions and other private platforms. And we're actually seeing a couple of large Swedish private platforms that have been inspired and launched new ESG initiatives quite recently. And I think maybe the word could be spread outside Sweden in a second step, but we haven't thought about that much yet.
Well, my challenge to you is help us think about that. Help us think about how to make that happen.
Yeah. Of course, any suggestions are welcome in this direction, of course. But this is not our main focus area. The focus area is pension for the public in Sweden. This is a tiny bit of the operation, but it's an important one, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Daniel. And my next question is for Maria. Maria, artificial intelligence is playing an increasingly large part in finance today. What is your vision of how AI-driven analytics will change investor decision-making processes to consider investments in ESG?
Great question. Thanks, Peter. What's interesting is that we had the rise of sustainable finance over the past couple of years, and it's happening simultaneously as the big data machine learning wave is all coming over us. And I would say that as a sustainable finance, we need the machine learning to understand the data that is out there. So all the new data sources, the kind of data that we couldn't use before into our investment processes. that I mentioned earlier. Traditionally, we had analysts reading up on companies. Now we can get news data, we can get social media sentiment, events, and all of that will help us to better understand and inform our decisions. And it also impacts in the way that there's no way to hide, because this machine learning, AI that you mentioned, and the big data will help us to find the information in a completely different way. So ESG is really thriving on the quality of data and transparency. Those are the things that you need to make better decisions to create these metrics. And if we didn't have them, we would be stuck in sustainable finance. But thanks to the rise of vast amounts of data that are happening right now that we didn't have access to, we're now being able to take better decisions. And also, to be quite honest, there's no way to hide today when everyone is equipped with a cell phone in their hands, which the whole population of the globe is increasingly being. So this is a great step for finance. But then again, I'm not saying that financial analysts will be replaced by robots. I'm just saying that this is a great complement to truly design better metrics. And that's up to us in finance to work with the specialists in climate change and, for instance, in any other sustainability areas. We talked about this earlier. We're just as much as we're an asset manager and a data analytics firm, we're a fintech company. We work very closely with NGOs and bilateral organizations together, because working on sustainable development, you need to do as a team with the large organizations out there in the world to get a better holistic view on how companies and organizations are impacting the environment and social issues.
Thank you so much, Maria. Well, that was a very complete answer, and it got everything I was asking for.
No challenge?
Well, we'll talk later, and I bet you'll challenge me tremendously. Okay, and finally, Tanya, now that S&P Dow Jones have launched their S&P 500 ESG index, this has taken ESG investment into the mainstream. How do you and the rest of Morningstar's leadership see ESG investments in the world scene? That's my first part.
Okay. Well, sustainability is really a mega trend that is changing the way companies and investors think about their success. So it's great to see this development from S&P, but also many mainstream providers have been building out a full suite of ESG indices, including us at Morningstar. We've developed sustainability, low carbon risk, as well as impact indices that are increasingly being used as a base for financial products. So we have several ETFs that are out there with impact shares that focus on women's empowerment, minority empowerment, as well as sustainable development goals, because indexes are actually a great way to harness the power of financial markets to generate positive change. And there is a strong trend towards passive investing. And obviously, indices are predominantly used as a base for passive product creation. And the trend towards passive is driven by a very simple financial decision, because active management is just becoming prohibitively expensive. Now, the trend towards sustainability, of course, it's something that's getting me out of bed every morning. We see so much more adoption in across Europe. Of course, Scandinavia is leading the way, but the continental Europe is catching on, and we see this in regulation. And of course, in the US, we start seeing so much more adoption related to ESG investing. And actually, we see that in the US, being an ESG fund has actually been the sixth most important driver of asset flows. And in Europe, it actually has been the number one driving factor. And we see much more transparency from asset managers with regards to how they speak about sustainability. So they start displaying sustainability ratings, they start ESG reporting onto the end investor. And of course, platforms start surfacing sustainability and carbon metrics, thereby bringing that ESG component into the equation, and providing transparency of information, of course, helps drive investor decisions much more meaningfully.
This makes perfect sense. And it's incredible how this has actually shifted in the past few years, hasn't it? It really is.
It's great.
It's amazing. So talking about leadership, at the end of the day, I am a leadership coach, right? So talking about leadership, I'd like to understand more profoundly what shifts in leadership you believe will be necessary to create a conscious change towards ESG investment.
Absolutely. Well, I think there are several components to this. First of all, it certainly helps when you've got credible leadership. And Daniel just spoke about the fact that the Swedish government had encouraged ESG and low carbon investing. And it certainly helps when you got that. I live in New York, which is part of the United States. We don't necessarily have the same leadership. But I think what could be done, which is really important, is that investors need to understand that finance can be a great engine of progress and great engine of impact. And harnessing the power of finance to drive that positive change is really the type of leadership that could be in place from pension funds, which we already start seeing happening in Europe, in the United States, in Asia. Making major efforts on governance and climate-related investing. So a lot of pension funds can drive that, and that's really their leadership. Then they can provide more transparency related to ESG. They can invest into companies that better balance their natural, financial, and environmental capital in decision making. And then, of course, it's the leadership from the end investor, from my mom, who is an English teacher. And so with her pension fund decisions, with a selection of funds that invest into companies that are more sustainable and companies that really care about managing their climate risks, they can provide that everyday leadership, and they can send a strong signal to companies that sustainability is really part of their success. It's at the heart of their success. So that's what we need to do as investors.
So we all form part of this, and our decisions need to be more conscious, and we need to lead ourselves through this as well. It's important.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you very much. And well, with this, Katarina, back to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I have one final question to all of you. Is there anything you'd like to add to what you just said about solutions, what you could do as a private person or as a company? And also, of course, in addition, we need to be able to we are able to send climate love warnings and also launch campaigns on the We Don't Have Time app. But is there anything you'd like to add, any good advice for people, viewers listening or viewing this?
If I may start, my comment would be, I think it was a great comment, that we all can make a difference today. And where there are not information to be had, maybe about your funds, your pensions, you have to ask. You have to ask your financial advisor, what's in this fund? What kind of companies am I owning? But also asking, what kind of climate impact do they have? Even if they can't answer today, that will start a journey and a chain reaction within that company to find out those answers. So we have a big journey to do in the financial services to help provide that kind of information, but it will not come unless someone's asking for it, and that's up to all of us.
Thank you very much, Maria Mel. Anybody else would like to add something?
I could build on that, what Maria is saying. Yeah, we are all leaders, we're all self-leaders. So if we together see that we can, as consumers, have the power to change, we will have the power to make a change. And when we do that, so please do the climate transfer. Go in and switch your funds, ask your financial advisors, your banks, and so on and so forth. And then they need to step up to the plate to actually have all the knowledge about what is climate conscious, and all the people working towards clients in banks, in funds and everything, they need to know this and be able to answer this. So I think that's really important. One challenge, I think, for the industry and also maybe also to the pensions agency could be that instead of opting out of what is bad, let us start as a default with what is good. And if you would like to opt in to something like fossils or what is bad for the climate, or if you would like to opt in to have savings in nuclear weapons or so on and so forth, let's do that. Now you have to opt out of it, and I think that's a bit strange.
Thank you very much, Joachim Jansson. And Thank you all for participating in this panel and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much.